I fell 37 and a half feet off of the roof. I had broken my femur, my tib, my fib, and 2 bones in my feet.
I feel like luck is the time that opportunity meets preparation.
If you're motivated by money, that's only going to take you so far.
Welcome back to the Growth Over Comfort podcast. We have another very special episode. I feel like last week's episode was super special because we had our first guest, and we now have our second guest. So I'm going to throw it over to Coach Steve Miller to talk about our special guest today.
Man, I'm really excited today. We have Coach Tyler Siskey coming to be on the podcast today. Coach Siskey has been the recruiting coordinator for Hugh, Lane Kiffin, and Nick Saban, and he is elite. He's like one of the top in the world at what he does and putting rosters together. He's the reason that Ole Miss, I think back-to-back years at Ole Miss, they had the #1 recruiting class in the nation. So to be able to put that together at Ole Miss, and then you're also looking at, he's at the University of Alabama winning national championships and doing that stuff. And then he's connected with Lane Kiffin as well. And now he's still working. He's running a recruiting service. But he has a wealth of knowledge, and the stories he tells is really cool. But he also helps coaches and high school guys still today understand the game and understand what they're doing. So we're excited that he's with us today. Coach, we have a mutual acquaintance in Coach Mike Bates. That's kind of how all of this has come to be. I know if you're like me, you think the world of him. But how in the world, and you can talk about, Mike said we couldn't tell any Mike Bates stories if we were on here, but kind of tell the story. How do you move from high school football to, like, at one point, and probably still now, if the game was still the game, but the game's changed so much that you said the other day that you didn't think your role really existed. But I would say that you were maybe the #1 roster building specialist for Division I football on the planet at one point. So you were the man. So how do you go from high school football in Alabama to being on staffs of like Hugh, Nick Saban, and you're the guy that makes it work. You're the guy that makes the roster. So if those kids don't come in, they can't do what they do. So how do you get that done?
I had been I started in college. I went to Auburn out of high school, played there. Or I actually sat the bench there. I was a really good bench warmer there. Went to Troy. Actually got in games at Troy, so that was kind of fun.
There you go.
Went to Troy, and then I got hurt. I wish I could tell the story where I could I tore up my knee when I was, but it wasn't even that. It wasn't even a football injury. I was actually helping my dad paint a house in Wedowee, Alabama, in the summertime on June the 23rd of 2000.
Okay.
And I fell 37 and a half feet off of the roof, painting the house, and that's a long way. So very fortunate to be sitting here talking with you today.
That's a long way down.
The good Lord had a plan for me, and it was not to be playing. Apparently, it was to be coaching. When I was in the hospital, I went to the local hospital there in Wedowee. They couldn't do anything for me, and then they take me to Birmingham. I had broken my femur, my tib, my fib, and 2 bones in my feet. And
wow.
And then I didn't even realize it at the time, but what's caused me more issues as I've gotten older is I have a lot of compression issues in my spinal cord, right? So from the fall, it's caused more issues than any of them. Those bones heal, but those discs, they don't like you very much over the years. But Larry Blakeney kind of got me into coaching because I was just going to be a high school coach. Had no plans to do anything else, and he called and said, "Hey, I got a spot assisting one of the wide receivers. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And so I coached the first, the first part of that year was, a cast on, right? And, Jeremy Rowell was who I worked with at the receivers, and that's what position I was playing. And he kind of got me into coaching. And so at the end of that year, I got on with Steve Roberts. And, there's a thing, I know your guys kind of got a all-encompassing show, but got a lot of different kind of people that listen. But, I'm a big believer in the good Lord has a plan for you.
Yeah.
And I always, I like the saying is if you ever want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, and then it'll make you chuckle. And, I've had a couple of these moments in my career, and one of them was right then. And when you go back and you listen and you think about the chances of this happening. And so there was a website that had just started called footballscoop.com, and it's now a very popular website. And the internet wasn't even a big deal back then, right? This would have been December of 2000. So December of 2000. And at Troy, I'm a student assistant, whatever. We'd finished the season. We were in between, finals and graduation. I'm about to graduate. And they had this website, and it's kind of like a classifieds for football coaches. And if they're a football coach, you know all about the site. And
Right.
But back then, we had one computer in the entire building that had internet, okay? And that computer was in our video coordinator's area. And so we would go in there, when you go in the office and stuff, we're young guys, we'd go in there and play on the internet because we didn't even have it at home or anything like that. And so we go in there, and we start getting on the site, and I see that they have a posting for a tight end's job.
Okay.
And so it said, hey, if you're interested, call this number. And again, mind you, this is close to Christmas in 2000, and it's just like randomly in the middle of the day, and a lot of people are gone for holidays and all those things, and I literally pick up the phone in just to call. I didn't know what was going to happen. I pick up the phone in the video coordinator's office at Troy, and I dial the number. Lo and behold, the head coach, now this stuff doesn't happen anymore, right?
Right.
The head coach, Steve Roberts, who's the head coach at Northwestern State at the time, he picks up the phone.
Okay.
Like, hello?
Wow.
And so I'm like, hey, this is Tyler Siskey, I'm at Troy, I'm interested in the job. And we talk over the phone. He then calls, because they were actually in our conference at Troy at the time, because we were 1AA in the Southland Conference. He calls Coach Blakeney and he hires me. And I go on to work with Coach Roberts at Northwestern State and Arkansas State for a long time, and come to find out, this is how random this was. Come to find out, he had his wife's Christmas present he had bought a long time ago and had it in his office. No one was at the office. He was going to his office to get the gift to go and take it back to the house, and just happened to be walking by the secretary's desk when the phone started ringing.
That's
and he
crazy.
was like, who in the world's calling up here at this point, today?
Right.
And that's why he picked up the phone. He had never done that before, and he never did it after. And that's how, it's fate, right? That's just how things work out. But I'd been with him for a while. I was with him at Northwestern State and Arkansas State as a GA, and I got married and had to get a real job. And contrary to popular belief, getting into college coaching, you don't make a lot of money, especially back then. You made more money in high school coaching. Now, you can make money if you get a really big job. You get the FBS jobs and all those things, you can make money, but the lower level jobs are half of what a high school coach would make. So I actually got married and had to get a real job, and that's when I went to St. Paul's for 4 years. And so when somebody finally left Coach Roberts to go to do their own thing, he hired me back as a receivers coach.
That's cool.
So that's kind of how my connection worked. It wasn't just, you got to be lucky, right? I mean, that's the gist of it.
But I would say too, even in that, yeah, there were moments of luck, but I feel like luck is the time that opportunity meets preparation. So you were prepared to fight for that job.
Yeah.
You were prepared to.
Yeah, there is. I mean, for sure, college coaching is really, there's a lot of, there's super great high school coaches. I don't, that's the coaching's very weird, right? It's coaches are going to tend to hire people they know.
Right.
And how good you are is just part of it. And I always used to joke, I was like, man, I wish all coaches had to take like an X's and O's test, and you got a grade kind of like an IQ test that could help you get jobs. But yeah, you doing the job. That's kind of my advice to young coaches is, be where your feet are, and work your rear end off at the job that you're at. Don't worry about the next job, because if you worry too much about the next job, you're going to let the job that you're currently doing slide. So yeah, it's but you got to be lucky, man. I know it's you are ready to go, but it's just you got to be very lucky.
Yeah. We talked a little bit on the phone about building rosters. That you said that was your thing. And you said NIL has really shifted how that works. Do you think that ever comes back? Do you think college football can be what it was 10, 15 years ago? Or do you think that we're looking at a different game in the future?
Well, first of all, NIL has been around a long time. They just didn't call it NIL back then, right? So
Right.
do I think it can come back? I do. But here's, for the fans listening, the thing about it is you have it's a money grab, right? And the NCAA is the best way I can describe it is it's like two married people that the marriage is over. And they're just holding on and they're waiting till the kids go to college before the kids move out before they get a divorce. That's where we're at with the NCAA. They're doing everything they can to hold on to one more season. I mean, they're literally season to season. This is over.
Okay.
It's over. The problem is we have too many Chiefs and not enough Indians, right? And you have, Greg Sankey and I would, just to be clear though, I would be too. I'm not faulting them. I would be
Right.
doing the exact same thing. But Greg Sankey, his job is really not to college football to do what's best for college football. Greg Sankey's job is to do what's best for the SEC.
Right.
And so you got all these conference commissioners and presidents. So you got conference commissioners that are doing what's best for their small group of schools that they represent. You got presidents and ADs that are doing what's best for their school first and then the conference, but nobody's doing what's best for the sport as a whole. And so the only way it will eventually happen, this House versus the NCAA case, is getting it in the right direction with revenue sharing. But this thing could be solved in a 5-minute lunch meeting.
Okay.
It could be solved in a 5-minute lunch meeting.
What's the answer?
However, they have to break off.
Okay.
They have to break off, and that's what's in the best interest, one, of college football, but the best interest of college athletics as it is, because you have this little thing called Title IX, and if you right now, and I'm sure you guys are aware, but right now in college athletics, football takes up 85 scholarships. Okay, and so besides football and basketball, every other men's sport are not full scholarships. They are reduced scholarships or whatever. And that hurts the products. Now, female sports, Olympic sports, they're fully vested because they have to match up that 85, right? Well, if football breaks off, that you take away 85 Title IX numbers out of the equation. And so now you have all the other sports. Now you'll have all the men's sports will be able to go to full scholarships, and you won't have to cut Olympic sports. If this stays the way, if they keep continuing doing what they're doing right now, you're going to lose sports, and young people are going to lose opportunities. So your cross country teams, your men and women's tennis teams, and things like that, they're going to get eliminated. But if you break off, there's this little organization called the National Football League. It's on every Sunday. It's the greatest sports organization that's ever been done, and it's a pretty simple model. And they just need to follow that model, and it could be done literally over a lunch meeting.
Yeah, just go in and take care of it and let it go.
They also have a commissioner. So they have one guy that's doing what's best for the sport. That's your difference right now.
Yeah. You work with some of the top names in the game. I mean, you've been a part of programs and seen things that most people really never get the inside view of. When you're talking about coaches like Hugh Freeze, Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin, all of those guys that are big name coaches, what separates those guys? What's a separator for them in your mind?
I think all of them are different, right?
Right.
I think they're all different. I think they all have unique qualities. If you look at, we'll start with, I guess I'll go in the order that I work for him here. We'll start with Hugh. Hugh was a coordinator when we started working together. I was a receivers coach, and he was a quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator. That's when I started working for him before he became the head coach. So we have a unique relationship because he was my friend before he was my boss, if that makes sense. Hugh is an elite recruiter. He is a very, really, really, really good guy to work for because he values family. And we had at the same, his children are now grown. I have mine are about grown. Mine are almost out of the house. So we had a young staff with a lot of young kids, and so he was really good about having kids around and making that important. And that was important to me. As a coach, again, a great recruiter, somebody that wasn't afraid to go against the grain. And, he was the first coach really that what I like to call took educated gambles. are high probable gambles in the football game.
Okay.
And when I started coaching, like when I first started coaching, I worked with offensive coordinator, and you got your cut ups ready to go for a game, and you're going through the cuts. Well, if you could come up with the greatest play in America, but if there was one out of the 564 clips that it was going to get, quarterback's going to get sacked, or you couldn't protect it or whatever, we wasn't running it.
Oh, wow.
Like everything we had in that game plan had to work against everything. And then when you got with Hugh was like, oh, they're not going to run that in that situation. We'll go. And I'm like, at first it freaks you out a little bit. You're like, wait a minute, because that's what you're used to. But he was right a heck of a lot more than he was wrong, and still is. But he's one of the best. Hugh is probably one of the best game day play callers I've ever been around. He sees the field extremely well, and he has a magnetic personality to where he can really captivate a room. Whether he's speaking, whether he's with a team, whatever. That's probably one quality he has better than a lot of coaches, is when he walks in the room, he can grab your attention and get you invested and get you believing. Coach Saban started work. I left Hugh, went to start working for Coach Saban. That had been in 2013, March of 2013. Coach is kind of old school, but also has a way to relate to the young guys. And I learned, the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of deal.
Right.
I mean, I'd been doing this for a while. There was not anything you were going to teach me, 15 years in my career.
Right.
I'd seen things. I was pretty experienced. But he had a unique way to, like, when you got there, it was almost like being a GA or a first-time coach again. Like, you realized you didn't really know anything until you got there. And it's like I guess it was kind of like Luke Skywalker, right? He was a Jedi before he went and met Yoda.
Right.
But you didn't really learn how to be a Jedi until you got with Yoda, right? So he's kind of like Yoda, man. You go there, you already kind of know what you're doing, but you go there and you kind of hone in and perfect your skills and learn a lot of new things. Learned a lot about decision making, organization, the right way to do things, temperament, a lot of things like that. Learned a ton from him. I mean, indebted to him for life. And then Lane was there. Lane came in as offensive coordinator my last year, and then he was at Ole Miss. We were there for about a month together the last time at Ole Miss when he was the head coach. I wasn't with him as a head coach very often. I was more with him as a coordinator. His brother Chris and I are best friends. We worked together at a couple schools. And their father, Monty Kiffin, obviously passed this past weekend. So thoughts and prayers with their family.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Lane thinks different than everybody else. Lane is extremely, extremely, extremely intelligent to the point to where he's kind of on a different plane than everybody else. And he doesn't have to work hard at it. He's kind of like the guy that's really smart and doesn't have to, like the guy that you get mad at that doesn't have to study but make straight A's. Like he's extremely intelligent. And from a schematic standpoint, he sees the field kind of like Hugh. Like they both see the field and the game going different ways. And he has a unique way to predict unpredictable outcomes in games. So like he can run something and you have no idea. You shouldn't have any idea how they're able to adjust or what they're going to do. And he has a unique way of seeing that and predicting that and hitting it for a big play.
That's pretty cool. I know you've got a few stories, maybe one or two.
I can't tell.
Yeah, well, I'm fully aware. They're like statutes of limitations and stuff, I'm sure, that can come into play. Give us when you knew it was different with Coach Saban. How long did it take into the process? How long did it take before you realized that you were on like you just said, you showed up, you're a Skywalker. I mean, you're legit. I mean, you're Luke Skywalker. You're walking in, you're a Jedi. You're the man. You can do the job. There's not a problem. How long before you realize, hey, I may not know what I thought I knew?
Well, there's a story. I will say this. I'm not going to tell this story, but I will tell you that to answer your first question, when I knew was my first staff meeting. I cannot ever tell that story. It will go to the grave with me. I can never ever tell that story.
Okay.
But I knew in the first staff meeting. But when I got hired, it was different. It was I've told this story, so I can tell it. But I really knew the answer to your question is I knew my first staff meeting.
Okay.
But I'll tell you about some signs. How about that?
Give me some indications that you may be moving in a different direction.
Yeah. So when the process of me getting hired, we had a really big class at Ole Miss.
Okay.
Larry McTunsell, Robert Comdici. We had a bunch of guys in there. Evan Ingram. We had a bunch of guys in that class, and that were, I think it was 4 first-round draft picks in that class, and it should have been 5, but one kid had gotten hurt. But we had 4 first-round picks in that class, and at Ole Miss, and never been done before. And the day before signing day, we were in a staff meeting, and we were going over the board. And those were back in the days, and last-minute pushes. Everybody's recruiting the guys, and we were going over everything. And I would sit. We had a big round staff table, and I had no idea what was about to happen, and I kept, you got your phone on silent, but I kept getting calls on my cell phone from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, in the meeting. And I was like, I looked down, and I'm like, and I just keep looking at my phone, looking down, and I'm sitting directly across from. I always sat straight across from Hugh. And then the meeting broke, and at the end of the meeting, Hugh goes, "Hey," he goes, "Cisco, why don't me and you stay in here and go over this one more time and see if there's anything else we need to do?" Okay, cool. So everybody gets up and leaves. I start to walk around the table. I'm going to sit next to him. And in those days, like this, when the staff meeting was over with, there was like, his secretary, compliance, whoever was outside waiting for the meeting to end so they could get coach to sign things or whatever, right? So they come in, he's signing things. And while he's doing that, I pull up the seat next to him and I listen. I had a voicemail. And he said, "Hey, Tyler, this is Lance Thompson. Give me a call when you get a chance." And Hugh kind of looks at me and goes, "Who was that?" And I said, "Man, it was weird. I was getting a bunch of calls from Tuscaloosa, and I got a voicemail from Lance Thompson wanting me to call him." Well, Lance was coaching at Alabama at the time.
Okay.
And Hugh goes, "Call him back. He probably," because we were recruiting against Alabama with 2 kids.
Right.
He's like, "Call him back. He's probably trying to get some information, or, let's call him back." He goes, "Just tell him I'm not here." So I had him on speakerphone. So I call him back, and I got him on speakerphone, and my boss, Hugh Freeze, is sitting right next to me. He goes, "Tyler, what's up, man?" I said, "Oh, nothing much. Just got out of a staff meeting. What are you up to?" He goes, "Oh, the same thing." He goes, "Hey, Nick wants to talk to you." I went, "Nick?" He goes, "Yeah, Nick Saban." And I'm looking at Freeze, and he's looking at me, and Freeze is going like, yeah, talk to him. So he gets on the phone, and he's like, "Hello, Tyler." It's really monotone.
Oh,
"Hello,
yeah.
Tyler." He goes, "Hey, we have a job that's coming open and running recruiting. Would you be interested?" I'm sitting right next to my boss.
Right.
And I'm like, I got it on speakerphone. I'm like, I just look over at him, and I'll never forget this. Hugh goes, "Ask for a lot of money."
Oh.
And so I went back and I said, "Yes, sir." It was just very awkward for me, right?
Oh,
and
sure.
So I was like, "Yes, sir." And so he's like, "Okay, we'll talk again." And I'm like, "Okay." Well, a whole month went by. I didn't hear from anybody.
Right.
And so all of a
Longest
sudden,
month of
Lance
your
calls
life.
me back. Lance calls me back, and he's like, "Tyler, I've been trying to call you for a month, man. Why aren't you answering?" I was like, "You hadn't called me at all." And Lance had been calling my old number that I had when I was coaching with Mike. He had a couple numbers for me, so
Wow.
I had my mobile number. He was calling my mobile number. I didn't have it anymore.
Right.
And when I knew it was different, I go down there and coach. We meet. I do I interview and all that stuff. And I'm in with. I didn't know this was different. I was in with Coach Saban for 2 hours in his office just talking.
Okay.
And they had practice. They had started spring practice. And he looks at the clock. It's like 2:57. And he looks at the clock and he says, "How long is it going to take you to get home?" I said, 3 hours. He looked at the clock. He goes, "I'm going to talk to my money man. I'll call you at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And I was like, "Okay." And, most coaches say they're going to call you at 6 o'clock, maybe 6:15 or whatever, right?
Right.
I'm pulling into Oxford, Mississippi, and as soon as my clock hits 6 o'clock on my phone rang. And we talked through like money stuff and stuff that I would want in my contract. Golf. My man Mike Bates probably listened to this. I had to have my golf membership in it, my country club.
That's
membership.
right. That's right.
But
Hey, he said you can play.
I can beat him. I want that on this podcast. I beat Mike Bates. I'm just
You are
joking.
better than Mike Bates at most things, and golf is
At
included.
least 50 strokes aside.
There you go.
He was my golf buddy, man. We had a good time.
I hear you.
I probably have not played golf with anyone more than I've played with Mike Bates.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We played a lot of golf.
I can
and
see
won,
that.
by the way. So, hey, I want to let everybody know this too. You can play golf and win. We won a state championship playing golf, daggum near every day. So it can't happen.
There you go.
You just gotta have good players. But if you got bad players, don't do it. Just make sure you got good players when you do it.
That's right.
But the cool thing was when I knew it was different. I said all that to say this.
Yeah.
I get to Tuscaloosa my first day. Okay, I get there, and I had a memorandum, like you sign before they do the contract. In bullet points, it had every single thing in the order we talked about them in the contract. And I was just like, he was in the car driving. He had nobody else with him, so he wasn't writing it down. He did that off the top of his head.
That's very impressive.
And I was like,
there you go.
That's pretty good. And it wasn't like 5 things. It was like 25 things.
Yeah.
It was a lot of, it was moving expense. It was a lot of
Detailed
bonus
stuff.
structure. I mean,
Right.
It was a lot of things, and that was pretty impressive.
Yeah. One of the things, and I'm an Alabama fan, so I'm an Alabama guy a little bit. You made the news a little bit just by sitting in the press box one game. Is there anything to that? Did that even matter at all, or was that just made up stuff from the press?
A little bit of both, probably. A little bit of both. I think it was blown way out of proportion.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
I got death threats.
Congratulations.
It was wild. Yeah, it was fun. I was a hated person for a long time. Still to this day, there are people I still, and that was it's been 11 years.
Yeah, 11, 12.
I still get messages from time to time, but my job, like I helped on the defensive side of the ball because I'm an offensive guy. So when I got there, I helped the defensive side of the ball to help them because that system was not just being run by Hugh. Gus was running it at the time. Kevin Sumlin was running a version of it. And so the spread, a lot of fans don't know this, but at that time in the SEC, you were making this transition from pro-style football to spread offense.
Okay.
And in 2012, the year before, Alabama had been 72% base personnel on defense, which is what you would go against in 21 personnel or 12 personnel.
Right.
And the very next year, they went from 72% base to 73% nickel, which is
that's a huge change.
And so the game changed overnight.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my expertise. And so I met and helped with defense. So on game days, I could see things. I helped with personnel. Okay. And so, and all you would say is, we had color codes for them, like blue, orange, yellow, red, all that stuff. Instead of saying, it drove me nuts because I was always on offense. I was a 10, 11, 12, 21 number system, and they had colors at Alabama. So I had to learn all those. Anyway, long story short is being the guy who sent in personnel and sent in plays, I understood how I could pick up personnel real quick.
Right.
And so that's what I did. And so I did that every game that I was at Alabama in the press box. And that particular time, Kevin Steele when the CBS, I don't know, it was ESPN crew. When the TV crews come, they will come to practice on Thursday, right?
Right.
They come in town early, they'll come to practice. And Kevin Steele and I were walking out to practice. And Kevin was joking with Todd Blackledge on the sideline. They were talking, and he goes, how's the game plan coming? He goes, we're going to be fine. We got our secret weapon, Hugh Freeze Jr. over here. And so Todd, had no idea they were going to do a spot on in the game. That particular instance, that was like perfect timing. They put me on the press box. I was in an argument with a guy on a headset about a play because he had switched personnel and gone to what we used to call 10 red. Okay. I actually called plays in the offense. I understand it.
Yeah.
And so 10 red was 10 personnel where he would put an outside receiver in place of the tight end.
Okay.
And when 3 gets on the ball, and that at that time of the system, it was 100% pass.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so it was like, I don't know, it was like 4th and 4, 4th and 5, whatever it was. And he goes, they're bringing him in. He thought they were going to run it and throw a screen off of it. And I said, no, it's going to be a pass. It's going to be a pass. It's going to be a pass because the receiver had got on the ball.
Yeah.
I was in an argument with somebody below me. And then all I was doing was personnel. I didn't steal any plays. You couldn't. It's not possible.
Yeah, you can't steal plays, but just understanding the scheme and understanding the personnel makes a huge difference in any game plan. But those guys are going to understand schemes and personnel anyway. They have every film that's ever been recorded of that coach all the way up through. So they're going to get most of that. Yeah.
So yes, that play I knew it was going to be a pass because number 3 was on the ball. I didn't steal the signal, I guess. So it's probably a little bit of both. I was yelling it's going to be a pass because I was in an argument with a guy yelling in the headset. The guy that was on a headset was yelling in the headset it's going to be a run.
Right. And you're yelling at him.
I'm yelling at him. The guy, he was below to my right. I was yelling at him. It was a young quality control guy.
Yeah, this one you said you would never talk about again on your podcast, but I have an interesting question about this one.
All right, fire away, man. I'm all good, man.
Yeah, when you're talking about social media today and elite athletes, and they're branded sometimes coming out of high school, but they're definitely branded. The elites are branded by the time they come out of college. So when they hit the professional side of things, they're a brand. And sometimes that brand's bigger than the team they go to. And we're talking, I'm going to bring up sore subject, WNBA. So if you're talking WNBA right now, at what point do you think someone like Caitlin Clark's going to go, I'm done with all of this, I'm just going to start my own league and we'll do our own thing? Do you think there's a day coming for that in organizations that are so messed up like that? Do you think there's a day coming where the elite athlete comes out that has more branding than the organization? Do you think there's coming a day that they'll go, we're good, we're going to start our own thing? Do you think that's possible?
Probably not.
Okay.
I don't. I mean, I'm sure it could happen. I don't think it'll be successful.
Right.
I mean, I don't think in any major sport that we have right now, even in the WNBA, I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not watching now, much less if somebody breaks off and does their own thing, right? So,
right.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it would be, I'm sure somebody may try it. I don't know if they will or not. I would doubt it, but it would be. You already have the league that you're competing against. They don't even have enough money to pay the players.
Right.
It's. Probably this is a good thing. I'm not on TikTok. I'd probably get canceled right now.
Yeah,
but.
probably.
By the way, I got suspended for 3 days on a TikTok live yesterday because we were talking about the Arkansas football schedule. And
congratulations.
I think somebody was upset with me or something about if I predicted a win or something, and they turned me in for hateful speech talking about the Arkansas football schedule. So I was like, man, we're getting canceled for talking about football now, man. It's fun times. I still haven't figured out what we got kicked off that. But anyway, the people don't. Everybody's like, oh, the WNBA is great and this and that. The entire league is propped up by the NBA.
Okay.
People don't realize that it's subsidized like 90-something% by the NBA. They don't have enough. Like if it wasn't for the NBA, the WNBA wouldn't exist.
Gotcha.
And I'm talking about like 90%. I mean, like a drastic number is influxed. And so to break off and try to make money, that would be very difficult.
Right. Yeah, this is a good question because you see kids all the time. And your whole, and just because some of them are 6'6", 315, cut out of granite, they're still kids. Their mindset's still very similar to a kid. So you see them all the time, and that's been your business for a long time. So when you're talking about developing a young person in the current NIL deal, are they able to develop the way they need to develop to get into professional ranks the way they need to get into professional ranks and even the professional side of life, because all of them don't make it to the NFL. So when you're looking at that, how do those, what would you recommend if you got a 16-year-old right now that's already starting to be heavily recruited? What's your conversation with that 16-year-old and that parent to say, this is what you need to do to prepare your kid for their future?
When you look at, I did a thing, and when I was at Alabama, because I get out there, I'm like, dude, all 85 guys are here good enough to play in the NFL. Why don't they?
Right.
And one thing that you find with, being around it, being in it for a long time, and, being at South Alabama, being at Troy, being at Northwestern State, being at Arkansas State, to Alabama and Ole Miss, all these guys go to the NFL, right? You've been doing it 20-something years. You got, hundreds of kids in the NFL. They all have something in common, and it's their mentality. And that's the thing when you're looking at even high school kids coming to college now. You cannot be motivated by external factors.
Okay.
And the number one external factor right now is money. Okay,
Right.
So you have an 18-year-old kid that's getting, a lot of times more money than the family's ever made. You got
Right.
18-year-old kids making more money than their parents have ever made, right? But that can't motivate you. If you're motivated by, and it's the same thing in life, okay? If you're motivated by money, that's only going to take you so far. If you're going to do a job, right? And the only reason you're taking that job, or the only reason that you're doing that job, is because of money, you will be miserable.
That's true.
And so, and people say, not me. Yes, you, everybody, because the people that say that may have not had money or whatever it is, but money cannot be the reason that you're making a decision or doing something, and you cannot be motivated by external factors. You have to be an internally motivated person. That I always like to say is, what are you doing when nobody's watching?
Yeah.
Are you, and are you working? Are you trying to get better at your craft or whatever you're trying to do? Or are you hanging out chilling? And that's probably the biggest thing. And whether there's money involved or whatever, the same kids that are going to make it to the NFL are going to make it to the NFL because they're internally motivated. They're not motivated by money. And the other thing is, from going to college with money now, they can't be short-sighted, right? Like you can't worry about the couple $100,000 that you're making playing in college and miss out on the millions of dollars that you'll make in the NFL if you do it right. So you're looking for people that aren't short-sighted and that are internally motivated and not motivated by money.
Can you still coach them as hard, or will they just load up?
It's not even about the money though, right?
Yeah.
The problem, I've said this and I'll continue to say this until I'm blue in the face. It really makes a lot of people mad. I don't care if you can't tell.
Yeah, we picked up.
The money's not the problem.
Yeah.
A lot of people are, getting all this money. Money's not the problem. Pay them. I don't care. Money's not the problem.
Right.
The problem is the ability to have unlimited free agency and to leave every 5 minutes if they want to. That is the problem with the system. The problem is not the money. The problem is the being able to leave. Yeah. And I always use this example. I use it every time somebody asks this topic comes up, and I'm going to keep using this example until it bears in people's head.
Okay.
All right. We talked about the NFL being the greatest sports organization ever. Imagine a world that the NFL had an unlimited salary cap and unlimited free agency.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got a lot of football fans listening to the show, imagine. All right. So let's do this. Patrick Mahomes, can we all agree that he's the best quarterback in the NFL?
Yes, sir.
All right, so Patrick Mahomes just won a Super Bowl, right?
Yes, sir.
But Jerry Jones, he's getting up in age.
Yeah.
He's going to want to win a Super Bowl before he checks out. And so after the Super Bowl, after the Chiefs beat the 49ers, he picks up the phone, he calls Patrick Mahomes. He says, Patrick, man, I'm down here in Dallas. We're in Texas. We don't have any state taxes. I'm going to pay you. I know your contract is for $450 million right now. I'm going to pay you $1 billion to come be my quarterback.
Yeah.
How long do you think it's going to take for Patrick Mahomes to pack up?
Not whoever packs for him's packing his stuff, and he'll drive down there, fly, whatever.
Now he goes to Dallas, okay?
Yeah.
He goes to Dallas. He goes in OTAs right after draft day. He goes to OTAs. He's out there throwing around with the boys, and he goes, man. The only guy they got, CeeDee Lamb. Everybody else stinks. All right? And then all of a sudden his agent calls and says, hey, Patrick, the Dolphins called. They're going to give us 1.5. And look, they got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They got some guys. Hey, they also don't have state taxes. And he leaves OTAs and he says, I'm leaving here. I'm going to play for the Dolphins this year. So in the course of an all season, he played for the Chiefs, the Cowboys, and the Dolphins, and he starts the season with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Like, how crazy does that sound to you? If I told you that, how crazy would that be?
Yeah, it can't work.
Well, guess what? That's 100% what college football is right now. So how is that going to work?
It's
Everybody,
not going to work.
it's exactly the same exact thing. And people don't, and when people think about it like that, they're like, oh yeah, that's not going to work. Well, no kidding. That's what I meant. So the problem is not about the money you're getting paid. The problem is that you're able to leave every 5 minutes and change schools. And that's happened. Look at Tyler Barron. I'll use him as an example. Tyler Barron committed and showed up in Oxford, Mississippi.
Okay.
Before classes started, he left to go to Louisville and went to spring practice with Louisville.
Okay.
Now he left after spring practice. Now he's at Miami. So he's gone from Tennessee to Ole Miss to Louisville. He's going to start the season with Miami.
Wow.
And he won't stay there unless something,
It's his last year. He doesn't have a choice. But but if he wanted to, he could dip right now and go play somewhere else before the season started.
That's unbelievable.
So what's the fix?
So,
is there better contracting or?
That's the part of the break off, right? You have to break off, and you have to have collective bargaining, just like they do in the NFL, and you have to have contracts. All right, and everybody's talking about this employee thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can't make them employees as part of the NCAA, because if you do that, you have Title IX, and now everybody's got to be employees, and it'll break the system. It'll bankrupt the system.
Gotcha.
All right, so you have to break off and become your own entity. Then they can be employees, and you can give them contracts and all that stuff. But the NCAA keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard. It's just a matter of somebody going, hey, you know what? They're riding this bad boy until it breaks. You know what I mean? It's like when you're riding on tires, then you got bald spots, and you refuse to get new tires. You just wait till it goes flat. That's what we're doing. We're waiting for the tires to go flat.
Gotcha. And then it's forced to be a bigger fix, much bigger and harder and costly.
Last question. We'll let you go, Coach.
Yep.
We appreciate your time, man. And I know y'all went through schedules. So who wins the SEC? Who comes out of the SEC this year on the football side? And then who do you have in the championship game? What two do you have in it?
Georgia, Texas. I think they have the most elite rosters when you're looking at them from top to bottom. I think Georgia is the best team in the country, so I would say Georgia wins it. I don't see a scenario where Georgia, Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State aren't in the playoff.
Okay.
I don't see a scenario where that happens. Like something would have to. I mean, if you told me one of them is not in it, something went wrong.
Yeah, something went bad.
Bad injuries or something. But from just a straight roster, the whole deal, coaching, the whole deal, those four teams are. I mean, I don't see how they don't get in. The interesting part from the SEC standpoint is you have, I call it like a second tier. You have teams like Alabama, Ole Miss in particular, that I think should be in based on their schedule, based on their talent and things like that. I would put probable would probably be the word I would use on those guys. And then you have teams like Texas A&M that has some scheduling things where they could get in. You look at Missouri has a super easy schedule; they could very easily get in.
Okay.
So it's going to be like the question is how many get in, right? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it if you told me 4 teams, I would start it with. You got LSU's probably in that as another team that can get in. Like Tennessee could get in. You got a lot of talented teams right there. The problem with the SEC this year, I talked about this yesterday on the live before I got kicked off. The problem with the SEC this year is there's no divisions.
Yeah. And
so everybody's like, oh, that's cool. It is cool, but it creates a massive schedule imbalance.
Okay.
And when you look at like Florida's schedule versus Missouri's schedule, I mean, Florida theoretically could be a better team than Missouri with 4 less wins.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's just this. There's no East. You don't have to play all your teams in the East and then a couple teams, or all the teams in the West and a couple teams. The schedule imbalance is a nightmare in SEC, and they have to find a way, hopefully in the future, to balance that out. Whether again, if they go to the NFL model or power rankings and things like that, but. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. Again, Greg Sankey's in it for Greg Sankey, and for the SEC, I don't blame him.
Yeah.
But you noticed that when the schedules came out, some of the schools, that they've set those schedules up to where there's a lot of schools that can get to 10-2.
Oh, there you go. Well, Coach, thank you so much for being with us today. A big thing on my part, thank you for staying in the game and helping kids. I know that's been your life. I know that's been your passion. I know if we were to go back and interview, I know you got hundreds of guys in the NFL. If we went back and interviewed those guys, they would talk about how you made a difference in their life and what you did for them. And I appreciate that. I appreciate what you do on a daily basis to help young people not only reach their dreams, but actually become a better human being that contributes to society. So thank you for that.
Real quick, I know we got to go. If we got young coaches listening, I'll say this too. Don't ever, and this is something Rich Rod uses. Rich Rod says this a lot of times, never sacrifice the culture.
Okay.
I think a lot of times we're getting, this is probably the part of coaching that bothers me right now a little bit, is because of the transfer portal and everybody hitting, and the transfer portal's in high school too. These kids are jumping up and leaving every 5 minutes too, right?
Right.
But never sacrifice your culture ever. And then you're not paid to be their friend.
Yeah.
Okay. You're paid to hold them accountable. And, I joke all the time. I was like, Mike Bates is obviously a good friend of the show, and he's a real good close friend of mine. I love him to death. And Mike knows this guy, but like I was very hard on kids.
Right.
If I had to hold them accountable, I was very hard. And you could probably survey my current players, and they would probably 75% of them would hate my guts.
Right.
I've never seen one after 4 years say that they didn't leave, telling me they love me and all that stuff and thank you.
Yeah.
And probably the biggest one, and Mike's gonna know this, when we had a running back at St. Paul's named Ivan Matchett. And Ivan, I rode Ivan so hard. He was so talented. He signed at Alabama to play football. But I rode him so hard. Mike did too. Rode him. I mean, just very difficult on him because he's always getting in trouble, whatever, right? And you just rode him very hard and held him accountable. We actually suspended him for his last game of his senior year, his last regular season game, and he's our starting running back. And those are tough decisions. And flash forward, when I got to Alabama on a Wednesday. Thursday morning when I walked in my office, Ivan Matchett walked in my office.
Yeah.
And he had gotten hurt at Alabama, but it was just going to school. And he walked in my office and said, "Coach, I know we had a rough relationship. I want to thank you because I wouldn't be where I was at today if y'all didn't do that, if y'all didn't hold me accountable and teach me the right thing." So I say all that to say this. If you're a young coach in the business or any coach in the business, never sacrifice the culture. And your job's not to be their friend. Your job's to hold them accountable and make them better men.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Coach. Man, we appreciate you today. Thanks so much for coming. You have to come back sometime. We'd love to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, and
good,
I'll be over.
Appreciate you, man.
I'll be over in Oxford pretty soon to chat with a new client of mine. So if you're ever available, maybe we can meet up sometime or something.
Hit me up, man. I'm here.
Man, that was a great chat.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking to him. I think he has probably a lot of stories. I really wish he could have told us that one story.
Yeah, some of those stories are hard to tell because they involve like people and where bodies are buried and those type things.
When it comes to that level of football and that level of teams,
I mean,
like there's some things you just can't mention.
Yeah, when you're talking, the level that they're playing on. Yeah, I mean it's the highest you can possibly play.
Yeah.
So there are all kind of things that they're doing behind the scenes that nobody knows, and you really can't. And I've heard it before. Everybody likes to eat sausage. Nobody likes to see how it's made.
That's exactly right.
It's kind of that way, I'm sure, on that level of football.
Yeah.
But, the wealth of knowledge that came through in the podcast that we just did with Coach Siskey is unbelievable.
Yeah.
If you'll really take time to listen, I don't care what you do, you can learn stuff in that podcast that will help you in your life. So, very thankful that he chose to come be a part today.
Yeah, definitely. And guys, we're going to leave links down in the show notes to Coach Siskey and all the things that he's involved with. His main show is McCready and Siskey Podcast. We're going to leave the links down to that. And thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys go choose growth, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Hey, y'all have a great one. Thanks.
Bye.